Hello, everyone. So welcome to the BlueInvest Webinar on Crisis Management for SMEs. We're bringing you this series of webinars to support your business growth in this challenging time. My name is Renata Peloso. I am a manager for the BlueInvest project. And as you know, the BlueInvest is a project that seeks to help startups and SMEs in the blue economy to get access to finance and to grow their business. We're very happy to have with us today Noelia Hernan Sanchez. She's one of our BlueInvest coaches, and she has over 20 years of experience helping SMEs and startups design successful strategies, deliver their business change, and always with an eye into innovation and international growth. She's CEO of Hernan Sanchez Assessores since 2010, and she provides both assistance, support, and consultancy for companies. Before I give the floor to Noelia, I also introduce Sheriff Labib. So she is part of our BlueInvest team, and he will be helping us today with the Q&As and also with logistics. So if you have any issues either listening or seeing the presentation, please let him know. As well as I'm going to recommend you all to use the chat function to send your questions across. So if you only see the Q&A, please go ahead and hover your mouse over the main desktop. On the bottom, you will see a little bubble chat. In this bubble chat, you click on it and you'll be able to see the chatter. You can always write at any point in time to all panelists. Also, I want to take the opportunity to remind you that we have another webinar tomorrow to present some strategies and approaches on internationalizing in the midst of uncertainty. So if that's something that is also relevant for you, please go ahead and let us know and register for this. Finally, just to mention some rules and some house rules for today's webinar. The first one, this webinar is being recorded, so important that everyone is aware, and will be available afterwards in our BlueInvest community. Noelia, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Renata. Good morning, everyone. As Renata says, we are today talking about crisis management strategies to get the business through this crisis. And today I will talk. I'm going to talk about what we are facing in 2020, because I'm sure we are all suffering the COVID crisis, but we should be aware of the scenario we will be facing in till the end of the year, and which will be the consequences in the short term and medium term. I will try to identify key factors for companies, mainly SMEs and startups, and how the investor behavior will be also affected by the crisis and the post-COVID effects. And finally, I will give some ideas regarding how to manage the crisis and reduce the impacts on the SMEs and startups. About the COVID crisis, we are facing a crisis that is completely different from any other crisis we had. We have the 2008 crisis still very close, but all these economic crisis and social crisis had a completely different origin. We are now facing a sanitary and health crisis, which of course has economic and social impacts. But this kind of crisis, this is having an unprecedented global impact, and we have no experience in the European Union. In the Asian countries, they have had pandemic crisis in this century. We could remember about the SARS in 2003, but we haven't had this kind of sanitary crisis in the European Union since the First World War. So for us, it's completely new, and we don't know how to cope with it and which will be the effects of this crisis. And also, what we see right now is that we've had demand side shocks and also supply side shocks because of the effects of the crisis and the policies that have been taken the majority of the European Union countries. So we are facing a completely different crisis, and this is the main problem, the first problem we have with the COVID crisis, that is completely different, and the impact will be unprecedented. What will we be facing in the next year, in the next 2 years? As you can see here, there's, of course, because this is a completely different crisis, the analysts don't know exactly how the economic effects will be. As you can see here, this is a forecast made by the Oxford Economics for the main economic areas and economic zones in the world. And what you could see in red is the pre-coronavirus baseline, the economic forecast made for 2020. In blue, you could see the current baseline with the crisis evolution. And in yellow, you could see the worst scenario we could face, which will include second wave of the coronavirus in autumn, winter. So as I said, we have a completely different crisis with completely different possible scenarios, depending on how the disease will evolve and which will be the effects and the political measures taken by the main countries. And also, as we've seen the evolution from January in Asia and how it's evolving from east to west, we could see that the regional effects are being different. First, because the political measures are differing from one country to other, and also because the impact will be gradual. We've seen the Asian countries are already, they got the green light to overcome the lockdown. But for example, in America, we will have America and Africa, we will have the effects later than in Europe or Asia. So we will have gradual impacts of the crisis, and also synchronized global depression, but with different effects and different impacts. What we've seen here is a completely disruptive situation. We like very much in innovation the disruptive situation and the disruption, but right now the disruptive situation is causing completely uncertainty. And uncertainty is always very difficult for companies and businesses, because it makes very difficult to know what will happen and how our business models will adapt to the situation we will have in the world. And what we are trying, many analysts are trying to know which would be the impact on, or if the COVID crisis is changing the world as we know it today. And of course, I'm sure you've listened to more optimistic vision or more pessimistic vision, or people who's thinking that nothing will change in the medium term. But I think there are three things that will change completely in the short term. For sure, the world will be more digital. What we've seen about the crisis and the measures taken to overcome the COVID crisis is that because we were locked down, or the social distancing was a measure taken by most of the governments, we have spent most time at home. So we needed to increase the remote working, which was more extended in one country than in others. And of course, consumers needed to increase their online activity. So even if the consumers were not very familiar with digital tools or the digital activity, they needed to be familiar during this crisis. So for sure, the world will be more digital after this. And it will be also more sustainable. What we could see here in these photos is Madrid. On the left, you could see the normal situation in Madrid in a normal time with this smoke. And on the right, you could see Madrid during the lockdown with a decrease of over 90% of mobility. And there's no pollution, and you could see there were mountains there that we couldn't see because of the smoke. So after the crisis and the lockdown, people and citizens are more aware of the impact of humans on our environment. So I think that sustainability will be an issue for consumers and policymakers. And also, I don't know, I'm not sure about the effect on the medium term about this, but we are talking about the slow society, because having this health problem and this sanitary crisis has changed for many people the things that are important. Many people is thinking about which are their real preferences, which would be important for them. And many businesses and consumers are changing their preferences. And afterwards, we will need another KPI to assess the performance of businesses, for example. And also, for example, we are seeing that the rural areas are getting more value than urban areas, mainly because in the rural areas, they didn't have so severe problems because of the density of population, and they will live more freedom because of the density of the population. So this will have an impact in the short term. I'm not sure it will have an impact in the medium term, but right now, right after the post-COVID, right after the COVID crisis, it would be an impact on the KPI assessing businesses and the consumer preferences. And also what we've seen that is completely different from other crises. If you remember the crisis we have in 2008, we have a financial and economic crisis with also demand problems, demand side shocks, and many social problems in different countries. The response from many businesses and many governments were cutting costs, trying to be more competitive through salaries, for example, or trying to take political decisions to decrease deficits. But what we've seen here in the COVID-19 pandemic is that research and development and innovation response has been crucial for battle the pandemic. And we've seen many cooperation programs between governments and businesses, between businesses, promoting clustering, for example. And I think policymakers and citizens are now more conscious about the importance of research and development and innovation. And this is completely different from other economic crises. We've put the scope on the importance of science and innovation. And we've seen also, because we need to be very agile and solutions-oriented, we've seen different approaches from governments and organizations to adopt innovation and research and development. For example, we've seen many calls for proposals, hackathons, and different ways to cooperate with startups, SMEs, universities, and different solutions and research and development actors. So that's completely different from other crises, and we hope this will last in the short and medium term. This is what we are facing, and the consequences the COVID crisis will have at least in 2020. But right now, seeing this from a business, from a startup or an SMS, we need to see, because it will be crucial to evaluate risk and know how they will affect to our business, and how we could find solutions or try to know which are our weaknesses and which will be the threats for our business model. Initially, and what we've seen since January, in our company since January, is that many companies, many European companies, they knew that the COVID crisis was in China and in other Asian countries, but they didn't realize, or they didn't want to realize, that we will have this in Europe in 1-2 months. They feel like another Asian pandemic, and this won't be affecting us. When March, late February, March, the crisis came to Europe, many people were shocked because they didn't expect it to be at home. They didn't expect it to be everything completely stopped. At the beginning, they were shocked and blocked also. But for any crisis management strategy, we need immediate action because, and in a crisis like this, the effects will be very fast. So we need to take decisions very quickly. And this is the advantage SMEs and startups have, because they are small, so they are very adaptable to rapid change. They're very flexible. And if they are innovative, they have creativity. So it should be more, it should be easier to take immediate action and create a strategy to overcome the crisis, this kind of crisis. But what we've seen is that in this crisis, we have 4 main axes to establish the strategy to overcome the crisis. And the strategy will be employees, finance management, supply chain, and communication and brand reputation. When we are talking about innovative companies, employees and people are the main asset, because we are thinking about companies which are creating new products or new services or new solutions for a market, for an existing market. So who is thinking the ideas is a person. So we need to take care and be very aware of the asset, the great assets that our people and our employees are. And in this crisis, we should be aware of that, because we will need to control costs, but also try to retain the talent. Also, because this economic crisis has a liquidity impact on the companies, of course, we need to do backward revision. I'm sure that all the businesses and companies have already revised their financial planning, because what they plan for 2020 is not valid anymore. But reviewing the operational costs and which costs will be crucial and which costs will be not so important, that's not very easy in a situation like that, like this, when we need to act very agile. We will have many problems regarding the supply chain, also the client side and the supplier side, because we have travel restrictions and logistic problems. I will talk about this in the next slide. And also, we need to work on communication and brand reputation. Why? Because we cannot meet clients, we cannot meet people. We need to communicate what we're doing, and we need to be very transparent about the problems we are facing, because every company is facing problems. So we need to be very transparent about it and communicate how we will solve it, because that will make trust in us to our stakeholders. As I said, in this kind of crisis, and with startups and SMEs which are working on innovative products and services, employees will be the main asset. Mm-hmm. And this crisis has a human impact. Of course, any economic crisis has a human impact, but we are now talking about health, and many people who are suffering severe consequences of the COVID crisis. So we need to think about how our employees will, which will be the consequences for our employees, also psychological, human, and social impact. Of course, ensure their safety and security. Most of us are working remotely because this will be the solution for taking care of the safety and security of our employees. But we also need to cut costs and be able to retain talent. And that's a challenge for many SMEs and startups, because many times they don't have the liquidity and the financial situation to retain talent. That's why we need to give any other kind of compensation to our employees, and put them on the focus to be the most important thing for our companies, because they will find the solutions. They will give us the opportunity to overcome the crisis, and they will be an important part of our organization in the near future. Also, this seems to be the most important part for, and this is very important part for most of the SMEs and startups. Think about December, November, when we tried to establish the financial plans for 2020 and our sales plans and our business plans. And in nearly 2 months, everything collapsed. And these financial and business plans are not valid anymore. So as I said, we had to be very quick, very fast to rethink and reshape everything. But what we are seeing with many clients is that they haven't think about of course they rethink about the financial plan with multiple scenarios, but many of them, they haven't thought about the possible scenario of a new lockdown in the 3rd or 4th quarter. And that will change completely our business plans and our financial planning. Of course, if we are thinking about multiple scenarios, we should think about that. This is a very pessimistic scenario, but it's a possibility, because we are starting to go out from the lockdown in many European countries, and we don't know which will be the evolution of the disease and which will be the impact if we have a second wave of the COVID. So we need to test and establish different multiple scenarios to know how our financial situation will be. As I said, we need to know and establish our non-operational expenses that could be cut. But be aware of the non-operational expenses we are decreasing, because as we will see afterwards, the communication and brand reputation, for example, will be very important in this situation. And there will be other marketing costs that they will be very important. And we don't have to also only maintain the production expenses, because there will be other operational costs, non-operational costs, that will be very important to raise the credibility or raise the visibility of our company. Of course, we need to take care of the cash, and liquidity is a problem right now because some companies are maintaining their sales, but they're not getting the payments from their clients because they have liquidity problems, because they are affected by political decisions, because there are logistic problems or banking problems, and you should take care of your cash and work on fundability. I will talk about this in the next point. How we will work on fundability in a time like this, when it will be very difficult to raise funds, and it will be very difficult to diverse the source of funding we have for an SMS or a startup. And of course, as I said before, we need to understand and evaluate risk very quickly and properly, because if we are assessing the risk we are facing, we will find solutions, or we will know them before they happen. So it will be very, very important to analyze, see what's happening, and make a accurate analysis of how they will impact on our business and our startup and our SMS. Regarding the supply chain, we've had many problems from the client side and from the supplier side. This impact could have legal problems, because we are not able to meet the contractual terms of our relationships with clients or suppliers. So we need to get advice about the legal consequences of this COVID crisis too. But we also need to get information about, of course, travel restrictions, because we cannot travel, but also logistics, because we are finding bottlenecks in different routes. We are finding delays in some routes because, for example, if you are trying to get products from China or to China, the Chinese routes are right now, everyone is trying to import sanitary products from China. So we are facing delays with different routes. And how we are exposed to the international scenario. If we have clients in different countries, and how the political decisions are affecting our clients in different countries, or if we have suppliers in different countries. For example, we started to see problems with our clients who were producing part of their products in China since January, or who had suppliers in Asia. They started to have problems, and we started to help them reorganize the production processes, or finding alternative suppliers for this part of the process. So we will need to know that to find different alternatives, and also how the political decisions are affecting to our company, because many times, for example, we are not producing a sanitary product, which is not allowed to be an export, but we are producing, we are in a sector which is affected by political decisions, and we cannot have a normal activity, or we have to reshape our business model to cope with these political decisions. So we need to think about that and find a solution. Reimagine the supply chain model. Try to know which will be the bottlenecks or the problems we will have in the next months till the end of 2020. And of course, if you are not digital, you will have to leverage digital ecosystems right now and increase all the networks you have. And I will talk about this afterwards, and also tomorrow when we will talk about internationalizing the activity in the COVID crisis. But you need to use all the networks you have, because you cannot right now you will find partners in places where you couldn't imagine before you could partner. And this has been, and this will be very important in this crisis, the communication and brand reputation. Why? Because, as I said before, we are at home. We don't have the opportunity to meet people. We cannot have meetings. We need to have only online contact with clients, partners, stakeholders. And our scenario right now is the internet and the digital. So we need to increase the communication and the brand reputation of our company. Why? Because this is the only way to increase visibility. We don't have events, we don't have trade shows, we cannot meet people. So we need to increase the visibility through the digital scenario and the communication plan we designed for our company. What we've seen since it started is that many companies, for example, are trying to gain a good reputation through, for example, helping organizations or donating money or trying to gain visibility for its company. And also, as I said before, this is an uncertain scenario, and the impact is being severe, very severe. We need to be very clear and very transparent with the actions we are taking, with the impact we are suffering, and with the solutions we are giving. So we need to be trusty to our clients, to our employees, to our investors, and to every stakeholder we are thinking it's important. So we need to design this clear communication strategy to make everything aware of what we are doing and the impact this crisis and the action we are taking will have. And also strengthen relationships with stakeholders, especially with the investors, as I will talk about this in the next point, because we are in a scenario that after the sanitary crisis, the economic crisis, maybe will cause that investors will be more conservative. So we need to strengthen relationship with them to make sure that they will back us if we need more funding or if we need any help from their side. And also, as I said before, trying to establish a clear plan for get to know the others, what we are able to do, what we are producing, what we are selling, and which is our soul, the company's soul, because that would be very important in this situation, which is more an economic, social crisis, but also a human crisis. And right now, I'm going to talk about how will be the investor behavior, because for many SMEs and startups, and especially those which are producing innovative products and services, investors and funding are a really important part of their business life. And we will see that we will have a slowdown in the financial market in the next months, and this could cause the death of many SMEs and startups if they're not able to establish a financial strategy or an approach to the investors and their funding sources of funding. The SMEs and startups are always trying to raise funds to grow and expand, because a traditional financial system usually is not financing innovation. So they are they have alternatives way of funding their projects. And it is expected that there will be a redefinition of the investing strategy. Why? Because there's money in the market, and there are companies like the funds which activities investing on SMEs and startups or companies. But there will be other type of investors, like business angels, for example, that could be more conservative. And also the venture capital and the funds maybe will be more conservative. They will be more eager to expand their portfolio and reduce the new investments. And that would be a problem for some SMEs and startups that will need to get to raise funds to expand their business, or maybe try to commercialize a prototype they have, or make marketable a new product or services they are working on. It is expected also a dip in startup valuations. Why? Because, as I said before, the business plans and the financial plans we had for 2020, they're not valid anymore. So the sales won't be the same. There are startups and SMEs that didn't find any change in their sales expectations, but most of them will have a decrease in sales. And of course, as the valuations are decreasing, the rounds will decrease too. So they will have it will have an impact on the investors' strategy, and we will have different impact by sectors and also by countries, because it won't be the same. For example, having an SMEs and startups from a technological sector than having an SMEs and startups which is working with consumer goods, for example, that will be more impacted by the economic crisis, because the consumer expenditure will decrease too. We will need to face an investor scenario where it will be more competition from the SMEs and startups that are trying to get funds. And then for coping with that, we will need differentiation. Our SMEs and startups, we need to get the attention from the investors, and we will need to have any difference from the others that are trying to get funds from the investors that are decided to make new investments. So how we will do this? We will need to gain credibility. In a funding shortage scenario, we need to be credible for the investors, and we need to show that they can trust in our business, in our startup, in our SMEs. How you could show that? Showing your experience and showing that what you are offering, or the product or service you are trying to market, you have any kind of data or any kind of proof that where the investor could rely on, and that could make the product or service really profitable, and that could have medium-term path for growth. So you need to show that you are capable to do what you want to do. And also, this is time for show that there are organizations and partners that already trust you. Credibility and trust will be very important in this investing scenario to get the attention of the investors that are still willing to invest on SMEs and startups. And also, in this situation, as I said before, it's very important to communicate to your current stakeholders. And one of the main stakeholders you need to strengthen your relationship is your actual investors and funders. Why? Because as I said, in this conservative scenario, many investors will be more eager to expand their actual portfolio instead of making new investments. So if you strengthen your relationship and try to know if they could back you, it will be easier to expand your funding partners. But first of all, my advice is communicate to your actual stakeholders and investors and try to know which will be their actions, which will be their strategy regarding the actual funding position they have in your company, and try to strengthen your relationship and try to get their agreement to back your company in the near future and in the medium-term future. And also, this is exploring other sources of funding will be a solution. And in this case, we need to broaden the funding base. And it's true that getting additional credit from banks, as I said before, is very difficult for innovative companies to get traditional financing, because banks need to see that companies are able to pay back their credits. And this is sometimes difficult if you are still creating a prototype and commercializing a new product or service, because you need the time to create the prototype, analyze it, and be ready to be a commercial product. So banks will be more difficult, but if you have already a credit from a bank, this will be a source of funding in this scenario. Also, the policy support from the government, because there are many governments that have designed different tools to help their SMEs and startups. But this is the time to look for and analyze how big corporates and clients will be a source of funding for SMEs and startups. Many times I see small companies that are very worried about pitching for investors, but they haven't seen that this capacity they have for pitching, it will be very useful to use it for client portfolio and to get more clients. And when we have a shortage of funding like this will be a moment for looking for clients as a source of funding. Clients and sales will mean cash. So we will decrease the dependency of funders, because we will have the ability to get cash and to get financial sources by our own through the sales. So maybe this is time to think about partnering with big corporates. They will also need to differentiate, because the need of differentiation right now in a crisis time will affect every kind of companies. And big corporates, they will need to differentiate, and why not differentiation through partnering with innovative SMEs or startups. this will be a way of getting funding. And also expanding our client portfolio. Of course, it's difficult, but as I said, differentiation is the key. Getting to know what your clients need and getting to know which is the solution you are selling and how do you have to reshape or adapt your business model to the current scenario. As a conclusion, to conclude, is it very important for right now for businesses, especially small businesses, to get to know and understand how the changing market will impact on our activity, because we need to fit the changing market. So it is very important to analyze and anticipate how this will evolve, how we could do this, understanding how our customers have changed and what they will need right now, because the needs and the solutions will change. Remember, as I said at the beginning, SMEs and startups, especially those which are innovative, they are very creative. So resource scarcity will be a source for creativity and pivoting our business model. We need to tune the business model. What we designed last year will not be valid this year. So we need to tune it and try to be able to get clients in a difficult scenario, because consumers' confidence and liquidity problems will impact on buying decisions. And we need to make sure that clients are able to consider our product or services a necessary product or service. We need to give them a solution that is necessary for them. And also because working on credibility and trust, and also because of the effects of this crisis, we need to help the client instead of selling. Change the vision of what they have about our company, and not being only a supplier or a client, but a partner, because that will be more reliable and increase the fidelity they have with our company. Because we need to think why the client would buy us instead of buying to other suppliers. So we need to meet their requirements, and we need to meet their needs. And of course, take profit of sustainability. If we are working on blue economy is very related to sustainability. We need to be able to sell sustainability and be an asset for our investors and our clients. And regarding the fundability, as I said before, how we will work on increasing the fundability of our company. Remember that a company will be fundable if we have sales, if we have a good portfolio. So maybe it's time to change the scope of our pitching or the scope of our company, and not trying to raise funds or rounds, but trying to get clients, because this will be the difference between having an idea on a startup or getting to consolidate our company, our business. Of course, this is a difficult time, but maybe this will be the time to make the change of mind or the change of the scope to trying to consolidate the company and getting clients, because we have an innovative solution. And the advantage we have is that we have no competitors or less competitors than our current company, a company which is marketing a utility, for example. So we need to work on innovation, we need to work on differentiation, and we need to work on retaining talent, which will be able to give us the opportunity to grow and increase the innovation and the added value we are giving to our stakeholders. Also work on our brand reputation and credibility, because in this time we don't need to be less credible and get mistrust our clients and stakeholders, and give the value the stakeholders are expecting from us, and at least being more valuable, being more credible, being more trusted, and getting funding, because we are an asset that an investor or a financing partner will be rely on. And that's all. Thanks for your attention. I hope this will be of interest for you. And if you have any question, I will be very happy to answer.
Great, Noelia. Thank you so much for the very insightful presentation. We are now going to open for questions. Here I have the first question. What could be arguments to captivate investors that are already conservative by nature now? Considerations: we had promise of investments that was withdrawn because of COVID-19. This question came from Victor Vieira.
As I said, we need investors which are conservative by nature. We need to understand why they are conservative. They are trying to invest on a company they rely on, and they think the company will give them profits, because an investor many times is investing because they need to get something in return. What you need to do right now to improve your pitching is, as I said, work on your capacity and work on your credibility, because many times I've seen really good pitchings because they work on the graphics, and they work on the design, and they work on the image of the pitch and the company, but they haven't worked on the business model, or they haven't worked on getting sales, because a company needs sales. Even if you are on the prototyping phase of the product and services, you could get partners which are interested in your product or service, and that could be a partner for testing the prototype or the product you have. And if you are raising interest on your prototype, that means that your product or services could be marketable and profitable in the future. So you need to show the investors that you have the capacity to monetize the product or services you are trying to market, and also be trusted. Experience from a point of view, and from my experience, the experience of the team it's always a very important asset. They need to know that the people who's behind the idea and the business know what they're doing. That would be the points I will work on right now to work on the pitch for investors, trying to make them rely on us through credibility, capacity, and experience.
Noelia, I have another question here. It's concerning how to motivate and reward employees in a moment that you cannot do that financially, how to keep them engaged, as you had mentioned before, different kinds of rewards to employees.
What we've seen is in this nearly 2 months is that employees, because this crisis has a human side, employees were very happy when they felt the company was taking care of them in a human side, taking care of their safety, taking care of their psychological situation, taking care of, this was not monetary, this was something more human or personal situation. Also communicating, because I don't know, the policies were different from one country to other, but for example, in Spain, there were many companies that decided to have this kind of temporary, this is not unemployment, but temporary unemployment situation, and they need to know which are the projects or the plans for the short term. They need to know the company is really counting with them in the near future. What we've seen is not, they don't need any monetary. They need to feel the confidence, and they need to feel that the company is working on getting over the crisis and getting a situation where they could all be like the previous situation, which the new normal situation. And that's the impression we had about working with different companies and employees.
I do have one directly to the host. Yes. Is there a difference between the approach of teaching face-to-face versus teaching via web?
Well, I think of course there's a difference, because, for example, when you are seeing someone and you are seeing how he or she moves and how he or she talks, that gives you a different impression than seeing a person only online. So that would be the first difference. You need to rely only on the digital slides, for example. That's the difference. You don't have your personality to give the pitch. Based on my experience, seeing many pitch and being part of pitch elevators, the person who's giving the pitch, it's an important part of the pitch. Because the personality is very important. So that would be the first difference. You will need to work very much on the digital presentation and the digital image, because that will be the tool you have to give to your possible investors.
On another quick note, Victor, and I did receive from Boris Tayland how the negotiation with investors have been affected due to COVID-19, and how to make sure investors are pushing too far in the return and benefits they may have from an investment exit strategy.
Of course, investors, as I said, there are more startups and SMEs competing for less investment. So they are the strength part of the negotiation. And what we've seen is that some of them, yes, are asking for more return or more different conditions that they had before, because they are the strength part, the strong part of the negotiation. That's why I said that as an advice, I should work on other sources of funding. And I said this many times today, and tomorrow we will talk about getting international clients, because I guess that working on reducing the dependency on investors and funding, this kind of funding right now could be an answer to the conditions that we are starting to see in the investors' negotiation. We've seen that, of course, they're changing the conditions because they have the money, and there are many companies needing that.
Perfect. So thank you all very much. Just as a wrap-up note, as you all know, the BlueInvest is a project that seeks helping startups and SMEs and the blue economy and getting not only access to finance, but also grow their business. So on top of the webinars and the community that most of you are already familiar with, we also provide technical assistance for SMEs with innovative technologies in the maritime field. If you're interested in getting this kind of support and having a more personalized assistance and support to your business, please go ahead and check our website and apply for technical assistance. We also, this is especially for Victor, we are also putting together a pipeline of projects that would be the showcase initiatives of the BlueInvest community. This will help you showcase and be exposed to investors interested in this sector and also impact investors in general. So please feel free to reach out to us in the blue-invest at PW. Perfect. Yes, Sheriff just shared our website and we'll shortly also share our email address. So if you're interested in joining this initiative, either the technical assistance or you feel you're already ready for investment, you don't feel like it's assistance with more exposure that you need, feel free to also write to us requesting to be part of the pipeline, and you will be assessed by quality criteria and defined goal. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Leah, for your great insights and for being with us today.
Thank you.